Escorting, what's that like?
Well, it's... I mean, that's a massive question, isn't it? And I was like, oh, maybe I could do this, and this could be interesting. And then I did it, and it blew my mind. Like, I thought it was amazing.
Let's go into what does your job generally consist of, what's on offer?
Proportionally, I would say it is probably things like...
Give me a good depiction of your roster of clients you've dealt with.
I like the idea of having a roster. I think the oldest was... and the youngest is probably...
What are the key drivers of why a woman would go and see a male escort, if you can say it in its most
succinct way?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've literally met with a Playboy bunny who you would consider aesthetically to be, well, you know, stunning, amazing. But we just didn't hit it off.
No honey for the bunny.
Well, like...
Is just purely escorting, going on dates, you know, creating that nice environment for people to enjoy themselves. And then how many would you have an intimate sexual experience with?
I think escort and prostitute is often used synonymously.
Yeah.
And there is a distinction.
Once you got into that world, how different was the reality from the expectation of what you knew before?
That is the right question, because...
Do your family know what you do?
Yep.
How did that go down? What's the story there? How often do you go on a normal date? Does penis size matter?
My penis or hers?
In your
Both.
job.
Right. Yeah. Well...
Hello and welcome back to Sex and Nomic. Today I'm joined by a very special guest. Do you want to say hello?
Hello, thanks for that. That's very nice of you to call me special.
Well, everyone's special, which makes it not that special.
Oh, okay. Take that back.
So we have Sebastian with us today. You go by Seb, don't you, as well?
Yeah, Seb's fine.
Sebastian Wright.
Sebastian Wright, yeah.
Is your name a pseudonym as well? Because mine's a pseudonym.
What?
Well,
You mean like it's a pseudonym?
yeah, so I have
Yes.
my real...
Yeah, I thought you meant like, I don't know why, I thought you meant pseudo-scientific. I don't know, that's a really stupid thought. But yeah, it is a pseudonym, yeah, it is.
So you've got your Christian name and then, you know, your work name.
Yeah, exactly. It was given to me, funny enough, by the, I think it was by the Sun, the Glorious Sun newspaper. I'm not affiliated with them by any way. So, you know, in the early days when I first did my very first press, if you like, first interviews, you know, kind of put a lot of them things off. But I did this one. I don't know why I did it. I still ask that now.
Get famous.
Well, they wanted to change. No, absolutely not. That's the last thing I would want. I'd be terrible at being famous. Yeah, they wanted to change my name to Jake. They wanted to change it to Jake Wright. Because when I actually started, I called myself Bastian, which is, you know, an abbreviation of Sebastian. And they said, oh, we want to make it more accessible for our audience. I thought, well, don't change my name. So they wanted to go with Jake Wright. And I said, well, I don't really want to do that because it's not the name that I've chosen. It makes no sense. You might as well just choose any old name. And it's kind of pointless. And which is basically what they were doing. And then they said, oh, how about we change Bastian to Sebastian? I said, well, that's fine because it's an abbreviation. So I went with Sebastian Wright and actually thought it was actually a really good name.
How do articles like that work with the Sun? Do they reach out to you, you reach out to them, then you agree on doing a media piece and it's more kind of an article that you help to run? Like, what's the...
Yeah, well, it was actually, it's more, it's just basically an interview. They contacted me following a similar channel to yourself, I would imagine. And then I mean, this is the thing, back in those days, you know, I mean, that must have been in the first 2 years, I think, that I was escorting.
It's not like selling a story where you get money for like...
Oh, no. It was nothing like that. The narrative really was about trying to break down the stigma or trying to help people. And one, I don't really think that was fully the narrative.
Legacy media have the narrative they project to you and their own unique narrative they want to sell papers with.
Yeah, that's what it was. They described me in that newspaper as the boy next door. And what else did they say in there? I remember when that came out, my best friend from uni rang me and he said, oh, I've just seen your article, and he was laughing. I was like, why are you laughing? And he goes, it's hilarious. He's like, they described you as, he's just an ordinary looking bloke or something like that. I was just like, hang on. That's not very good, is it?
I want to feel special.
And then I also thought the photos weren't very flattering. And one thing that I did that I would never do again is I looked at the comments. And, you know, you can imagine the kind of comments from Sun readers. It was just Most of it was unintelligible. I couldn't even understand it. Most of what was being said. So that was funny. But obviously, I was just, I shouldn't have looked at those. But nowadays, I'm much more selective. I'm much more selective about the kind of coverage, kind of interviews that I do, because it has to be really centered around trying to understand why women hire escorts, for example, or trying to understand why I do this and what I bring to it, rather than it being trying to sell this really cool thing about this mysterious job and how cool it is to be an escort, which is kind of, I think, what the Sun article was really about, trying to sell this cool story about being an escort, and it's just not really what it's about.
Well, it's either sensationalism or a hatchet job when it comes to
exactly
anything to do with this world. But of course, on one hand, all they know is what they see through other bits of media. So, like, of course, the films like American Gigolo.
Yeah.
Or is it Good Luck to You, Leo Bronte?
Leo Grande. Leo Grande, I would say, interestingly, that was the most accurate rendition of my experience as an escort.
It definitely felt more organic when I watched it.
I was quite happy with how they did that, because he was very much client-centered. He was smart. He was, it wasn't just this thing, he turns up and she just has sex and they go. And I mean, that would make a dull movie if that's all that happened. But, he was kind of much more considerate. And it was just more of an expansive representation. It wasn't perfect, but it was a pretty expansive representation, I think.
Well, it's hard to depict escorting, I feel, because each experience with each customer is completely individual. So you can't really say this is the example in one film.
Yeah, I guess my point mainly is it felt less like it was a cliche, and not like stereotypes.
A friend of mine, she told me to watch it, and I watched it before doing this interview.
Yeah.
And it's weird because then my other friends watched it and they were more attracted to that type of film than probably more traditional stuff that's been put out about escorts, like, I fuck girls, like,
get paid to get laid shit, and yeah.
But let's jump into it. Escorting, what's that like?
Well, it's I mean, that's a massive question, isn't it? It's brilliant. I mean, that's one word for it. If I was to do, like, if this was a movie and it was to be like all the media companies on the back, 5 stars, brilliant, fantastic, those words work. I think my experience of escorting has been incredibly enriching. I think it's really helped me grow as a person and as a man, and as an individual. I've learned a lot about women. I've learned a lot about the world, and I think that it's just been an incredibly fascinating experience. What I've learned, the experiences that I've had, and how broad those experiences have been, and how wonderful it's been to be someone that women have wanted to share their time with, and also someone that they've wanted to share their experiences with and open up to me.
So when did you start, and how long have you been doing it for?
I've been doing it for 8 years. So, that's 8 years ago.
What was life like for you before you jumped into this world?
Well, I'm actually trained as a product designer. So that's what I went to uni to do. So I've got a creative background. I was always quite into drawing and a little bit into making things. And that was a bit of a natural path for me, really. And I just I went from being in uni and working really, really hard and really enjoying what I was doing to graduating from uni, and gradually that motivation and that desire really slipped away. And part of that was the fact that I started working in sales jobs, the intention being, if I work for brands that I really want to work in the studio for, I can get my foot in the door, which is an easier way to do it, show them my portfolio, build a portfolio along the way, and then maybe get some work here and there, and just kind of gradually build up my experience. Now, the issue with that is I'm a people person, so I'm good with people, and I was gradually progressing up the sales ladder, finding that what was happening is I was getting less and less both time and desire to work on my portfolio on the side. And that just meant that suffered. And I got to a point where I was like, something's got to give. I just can't keep going on like this. And I was exploring various different apps at the time. I think Field was out. There was a thing called Fab Swingers that was the first one I was on. There's all these different things. So I considered doing this, and it was a friend of mine who suggested it. And he was like, why don't you try that? You're kind of already out exploring these dating apps and casual dating, and maybe it's something that you could be good at. So I gave it a go. That was 8 years ago. And I haven't looked back, as they say.
What was your sexual rhythm in your personal life like before you joined escorting, in terms of, were you just an average guy who dated, or were you hitting up the strip clubs, going to swinging parties and sex parties? Like, what was the rhythm like?
Well, I suppose I was an average curious guy. So, you know, obviously my curiosity isn't restricted to my creativity. I was trying to explore what was out there, and, you know, going on these kind of casual dates and exploring that world. And, you know, some of the women I was meeting with, it was for the intention of potentially finding a relationship, so to speak, where we would build some trust, and then we would both have someone to go to parties with, to explore sex parties. So that was kind of one aspect of it. And then I remember, actually, interestingly, when I met my first couple, because that was one of the earlier experiences that I had on those sites, and I wasn't really that interested in doing that. A friend of mine was like, he was really keen for it, and it was his idea, not his idea for me to do it, but it was something he was really interested in. I was kind of like not really bothered. But then an opportunity came up where somebody messaged me on Fab Swingers, and I was like, oh, maybe I could do this, and this could be interesting. And I did it, and it blew my mind. Like, I thought it was amazing.
How old were you at the time when you started doing it?
So, this is a maths question. It's a very simple maths question, but
like early 20s or?
So when I started doing that, so I'm 35 now, probably around, I would say around 22, 23, yeah, so early 20s.
It's an interesting age, because I always say with stripping, you could meet the most mature 18-year-old and she's fine, but the majority of people who just turn 18 aren't necessarily ready to do that full time.
Yeah.
But with men, it's a bit of a different sexual paradigm. And I don't know, like, were you ready at the time? Did you feel like, maybe I started a bit too young, or? You
mean in terms of exploring the, let's call it the scene, for example?
Yeah. Escorting, actually.
Oh, escorting?
Yeah.
That is a good question, because when I see guys on there now that are like 19, 20, I'm like, you know, like, mate, live a bit first. I mean, I was young. Obviously, 23 is young. Yeah, it is young.
I'll rephrase it. Were you emotionally mature enough to start the escorting in your mind?
Well, it's not a question I thought of at the time. And I think it's one of those things. When I'm given a challenge, like when I was in, you know, that I always talk about as an example, when I've been made to do presentations at any job. I remember at my last sales job, my team manager, he said to me, he had that look on his face that was like, oh, you've got to do a presentation. So to say, oh, you know, it's not going to be easy. But I was like, there was something about that kind of situation that I step up to the plate. Yeah, because I think it's an opportunity. And I like to make people laugh, and I use an opportunity to really kind of engage people. So I think it was kind of a similar thing where it's like, right, I'm going on this date, this person's hired me, like it's a whole new experience, and I really wanted to give the best of myself, not in a way where I like really want to force it, but I saw it as a really good opportunity to kind of get to know someone, have a new experience, and it was also obviously new for me, and it was an opportunity for me to learn about a completely different world.
And once you got into that world, how different was the reality from the expectation of what you knew before?
That is the right question, because the only thing I had to operate on, my compass...
Thank you, it makes me sound clever.
But it is a good question, because the only compass I had to operate on was the stereotypes. I didn't know any escorts. I never met any escorts. I never met anybody who hired an escort. You know, so you always think, well, everybody always says, oh, it's lonely women who can't get it anywhere else and all that, which is literally so far from the truth. And also the guys, you're like, well, I was thinking when I was going there, you know, I was dating a lot at the time, and my success rate wasn't excellent. I'll put it that way. So I think what had happened, I'd become a bit of a serial dater, and I was caught in that cycle. Where it was, I'd have a bad date, and then it'd piss me off, and they'd be like, right, I'm just going to give it a rest. But then I wouldn't give it a rest, because I didn't want to I wanted to end on a high note, because then you just get stuck in that cycle, and that's what was happening to me. You know,
well, once you got there, I mean, men, they are known for having a high sex drive. Were you like a kid in a candy store? Were you like, is this real?
Once I got where?
Into the meat of escorting.
So you mean like when I met my first client?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't a kid in a candy store. I think my curious brain was switched on, I think.
Okay.
And I think that's the thing, you know, I suppose a good answer to your question about being emotionally mature. I think I'd kind of, growing up, I'd had to take accountability of myself. I mean, you know, I had to step up to the plate in that way, in some sense. So when I got there, I think that I was, you know, I've certainly hoped that I've matured emotionally over the years, partly through my experiences and partly proactively self-developing myself. And I think the curiosity and desire to figure this out and what's going on, it creates an openness. It's you know, by nature, that's an openness trait. And it kind of gave me the opportunity to kind of really learn. And I waffled a bit there.
It's all right. It's fine. So we'll call him Baby Seb at the time.
Baby Seb, yeah.
He meets his first client,
Yeah.
second client or clients. It's not so much the horn that's bringing you into this thing.
Yeah.
It's more
Yeah.
the psychological plates turning in your brain saying, oh, this is interesting. I need to know more about this.
Yeah, that's a good question as well, because the comparison between it being the horn versus the horn and the brain.
Psychological.
Yeah, psychological. Because this always like blows people's minds. I'm not someone who's super highly sexed. Like, my sex drive isn't exactly flying high. So I was going in there like, you know, not like, oh, I really want to get laid. It wasn't that kind of thing. It was kind of with the curiosity to try and understand this person. What is their driver? Why are they hiring an escort? You know, what can I learn from this experience? And it was a fascinating experience.
See, a good stripper thinks of all of that kind of stuff before the lap dance, but they think of it from a point of view of how can I manipulate that to extract as much as possible money.
Yeah.
Because you're only in there for a short time, like an hour maybe tops.
Yeah.
But from speaking to you personally, it sounds more deeper on a level like you care about people.
Yeah, I do, 100%. And that is an underpinning that has been a contributor to my success, 100%, because that's inspired my evolution. When, you know, like I talk about that first time, why is this person hiring an escort? What's her background? What's her experience? What is she really looking to kind of gain? So that's definitely an underpinning of what I do, for sure.
The one thing from dating myself, even as someone who is in their mid-20s, so technically by patriarchal standards at their peak, women are not often seen by men in terms of sexually. It's just like, okay, you've got boobs, a vagina, let's have sex. But men don't understand that the foreplay starts so much earlier and is taking an interest in what I'm saying, listening, active listening. And for men, it's such an immediate thing, but women, they're just built differently. It's more success if you listen and take that time to really digest what that person wants.
Yeah. And that's kind of, in some sense, the inherent nature of men versus women. You know, men are testosterone fueled, women are more emotionally oriented by nature, and that's obviously one of our natural characteristics through our evolution. So yeah, it is trying to get to that point where it's men trying to understand that there's a whole process, however long that process and whatever that process looks like is going to be different for different women, of course. And there's a real beauty in recognizing that as a man, I think, because what actually it does is it presents you with an opportunity to realize, okay, what if I slow down? The way I describe it, right, is if orgasm theoretically is the destination and you take the opportunity to really look out the window, it's like, what can I see? What can I notice? And what can I experience? You can make that journey such an incredibly enriching experience. And that whole foreplay process can be either the whole thing. You know, it doesn't have to be something that leads to sex. It could be the whole experience, or it could be part of the experience. But it's about being in the moment with that, and really it can be incredibly enriching.
Well, let's go into what does your job generally consist of, what's on offer. So imagine what a pie chart, and what do you spend most of your time doing?
Most of my time
with your clients.
Yeah, most of my time with my clients, proportionally, I would say it is probably things like dates, some form of connection, something that's, you know, all of the stuff that's really important in terms of, I suppose you could call it a form of foreplay if it's going to contribute to it leading to sex. So that's the sum of it. I mean, because the way I work, and I know that some escorts work differently, and that's obviously fine. You know, if someone is to call me now and say, can you meet tonight or meet in 2 hours, That's just not how I operate. There's normally building a bit of a rapport, getting to know the client, both because I want to ensure my own safety and they obviously understand them and what their needs are, to make sure that I'm the right escort for them. And it's just, I just think that there's something deeper to that experience than just chuck and fuck or buck and fuck or whatever the saying is.
Do you think the horn dogs are more responsive to like a cool girl or cool guy thing, and then what you're doing is more emotional guy?
I would say, yeah. I think that
we're going to call them horn dogs.
Yeah. So are you talking as well about, when you say horn dogs, are you talking about male escorts as well? Are you talking about?
Yeah. But so like male escorts who are there like, yeah, I can make it in 2 hours. Let's do the damn thing and stuff.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to take anything away from the guys that want to do that, because that's fully their choice.
And it is the job.
Yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean they're horn dogs. Like there is an element of that, but I think some of them just prefer to work that way. They're just fully, that's what they want to do. And I think that's probably the perception of how it works for the most part.
See, it's interesting the way you've described it on developing such an emotional kind of a connection and establishing it. That's absolutely what I try and avoid with people. Yeah. Because I don't want to get close. Like in my job, it's like, you can look at me, but you're never, ever, ever, ever going to get near me. Yeah. And it's so weird that you do the reverse of that. And you're like, let's open this thing up and look inside of it. But
that obviously looks different for different women, because I think people can make the mistake that when you talk about making a connection, I think that, as there is with many things related to sex and intimacy, there's a particular idea of what that means and what that looks like. Now, it's not the same as trying to form a connection like you would if you were looking to get in a relationship, but connections are broad and varied. You know, a fleeting connection that you have with someone you meet in one day can still be a beautiful connection that you gain value from, but it's not going to manifest itself into a relationship. So that what I'm talking about is, someone contacts me, let's get to know them a little bit. What's their background and how can I connect? Where's the area that I can connect with them on? Because they're going to want to enjoy my company. They're going to want to feel safe with me and all of these things that are really important, rather than it's almost like, I've just come up with this analogy in my head to work with me here. Like we're standing opposite sides of the window. Now, for some people that works. We can try and communicate through there and it's whatever, we see each other, we go. But open the window and have a conversation. It's the equivalent of breaking that initial barrier down. You know, I'm not getting into their life and spending personal time with them. It's not that. But it's trying to find out what form of connection is right for them and what's going to work for them and what they're really looking for.
I like the window and I like it double glazed.
Yeah, well, there you go. Double glazed. Yeah, and maybe black it out sometimes, depending on the client.
Literally. So, what are the ages you see?
That is also a question that is broad and varied, yeah.
Give me a good depiction of, you know, your roster of clients you've dealt with.
I like the idea of having a roster. Oh, I have to look through the roster and see
your archive.
My archive, yeah. I've got a library of all the stories. I probably have got a library of stories by now, to be fair. But
what's the oldest versus youngest?
So the oldest, I think the oldest was 69. That was a platonic arrangement where I met with someone who was travelling around Europe. It was originally the UK, but then it became Europe. And the youngest, I would say, is probably 20.
20.
Which surprises people, because that is obviously a massive. If I was to add them all up and create a proper average, that would be probably 40s to mid 40s, I would say.
With the girl who was 20, or the ones you've had in their 20s, obviously in the sexual marketplace, like they're not gonna struggle, and I don't really like using that word, sexual marketplace. Yeah. But what was the drive to go and see an escort for that person, do you think?
So this is actually what's interesting, and one of the things that partly fuels or has inspired the evolution into my coaching work. Because what can happen if, for example, it's somebody who's 20, one example might be they've grown up in a religious family. By the time they've got to 20, they've rejected it. Part of that upbringing has meant that they haven't explored their sexuality. They have no relationship with sex that's particularly positive, and their explicit intention is, okay, I've got some sexual shame around this, I want to address it, I don't have any experience, I don't want to go out in the dating scene, because when they've tried, in some examples, as soon as somebody knows that they're inexperienced, the tact changes, and they want to build their confidence and self-awareness before they consider the prospect of maybe getting into a relationship at a later date.
And it's not necessarily they're going to see the outcome of what's going to happen ahead, but I know going into like a dating pool, some guys are going to be after one thing and some guys are going to have a preconception if I'm not that sexually experienced. So it's better in that mind to go with someone who is going to take their time and knows about these kind of things.
Exactly. This is one of the things as well, when people consider something like escorting as being an invalid service or not valuable or all this kind of rubbish.
Oldest profession in the book.
Well, yeah, exactly right. So it's also the fact that I think that's one of the questions. Why wouldn't they just go on a date and meet someone else that can give them that? It's like, well, there's a lot of things that they need from the experience and they want to make sure that they get those things. It's like, you know, if you want a plasterer, I always use building analogies with these things because I think they're quite relevant. It's like you could ask a friend of a friend who you might do a good job, or you can go on a site where you've got reviews, he's professional, you know, he's qualified, all this kind of stuff. And you just say, well, I'm just going to go with that. I just feel better doing that. I feel like I'm going to get what I'm looking for if I do it this way.
Well, as a male escort, how much of your time is just purely escorting, going on dates, you know, creating that nice environment for people to enjoy themselves? And then how many would you have an intimate sexual experience with? Because people would be surprised, especially the listeners, to know that escorts don't necessarily fuck their clients all the time. It's more about that interaction.
Well, this is why I think it's important to draw. I think escort and prostitute is often used synonymously, and there is a distinction. So at least in my understanding and my perception of it, the way that I use that language is that a prostitute is somebody who's paid for sex, which is perfectly fine. That's me separating myself from that is not saying there's a problem with that. That's fine. An escort is someone who's paid for their time that can involve sexual services. And the reason it's important to draw that distinction is because, like I say, I've been traveling with women before and it's been strictly platonic. They're coming from abroad. They've never been to the UK. They want someone that they can trust, that's going to be a travel companion, travel guide, or whatever it might be, that they can travel and have a good time with, and no sex is involved. So you can't say that they're the same thing because they're clearly not the same thing. Though I would say, to your question about how much of it does involve intimacy, if we're talking intimacy in terms of sex specifically, I would say probably 3/4, maybe 80%. Most of it does. Yeah, absolutely.
I would have guessed probably around about that percentage.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, the word prostitute. In one of the episodes, I spoke to a lady who works at the Phoebe, shout out to you, who works at the Prostitution Information Centre, and she made a really good point in the word prostitute actually is so like quite a vast thing in terms of someone who sleeps with someone for a promotion. Technically prostitution.
Yeah, you mean if it's non-financial?
Yeah. When you're using sex as a leverage to catapult you into something above where you already are, it technically is that. And it's weird that we criticize people who do it out with their chests out versus a gold digger versus someone who sleeps for a promotion versus, you know, really religious guy who probably does it in secret and is a consumer. And we never demonize for example, even in porn, we never demonize the consumer. We always demonize the people who do it.
And a lot of the people doing this is the funny thing, isn't it? When I've seen numerous talks, conversations and seminars and whatnot online about sex and intimacy, and I quite enjoy attending and viewing those things. And some of the conversations I've seen between YouTubers and sex workers, it's quite interesting how it's
the AdSense is going to go as well on YouTube. The AdSense, so like the monetization. Unless you have a sponsor. Pointless. But sorry, you were saying.
So my point was going to be like how some of them are so vehemently against sex work, and when I see those things, I always have that question in my head. It's like, do you watch porn? Do you consume any porn in any way, shape or form? Is there anything related to sex outside of your relationship? All of this kind of stuff. Because that's the thing, people always view it as being different. Like they want to judge sex workers, but don't consider porn actors to be sex workers. And the irony of it is that when you consider the difference between the two, one of these people is meeting consensually with somebody else to have sex in private. The other person is presumably for the most part, let's assume, without getting too much into the politics of the ethical side of porn, somebody's being paid as in a contract to have sex with someone on camera for lots of people to view. Again, perfectly fine, but it's ironic that they're not happy with somebody doing what they want in private. Like, that's weird. It's weird, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
I think a lot of it is, which I understand, more conservative people, they don't like the brashness. Like, I like to think with this podcast, it's something you would go looking for if you were interested in it.
Yeah.
I think some people don't like things plastered in their face.
Yeah.
For example,
yeah.
I don't like
fair enough.
I don't like religion plastered in my face.
Yeah.
I don't like dogma. If I was to have children, I would definitely not send them to a religious school.
Yeah.
Not to say that they could become religious, and find that organically, but I don't want it in there. And I get it. Like, a red light district should not be plastered everywhere.
Yeah.
That's why it's a red light district, because it's a place where you can go.
Yeah.
So I understand that on one end, but also there's people who are just hypocritical, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
just really hypocritical. For example, we get like women who come into a strip club and they're not really happy, but they're just doing it because they want to be down for the ride with the guy they're with. And you can just feel the judgment and the questions they ask and, those kinds of things. But yeah, it's just really hypocritical. I waffled then. So
No, but I do get what you mean. And it's interesting because, I mean, if you're hosting an interview like you are, you can do it however you want, obviously.
Yeah.
If you're hosting a conversation, But I just think that sometimes I see these conversations and I think there's a missed opportunity to learn about someone there. And I think that what I've perceived through my experience of these webinars and these seminars, etc., and these talks, is that what happens is it's kind of, when it comes to these hot button topics like sex work, people switch.
Hot topics.
Yeah, the hot topics, the topic of the moment. But contentious subjects, I suppose you could say. It's interesting how people that have a real emotional reaction, and it's their emotion that drives their thinking. Because I literally see people that I would say, well, this person's quite intelligent. I've seen them have a conversation about this thing. And then when they talk about this thing, it's like if I saw them in that conversation before I'd seen the others, I might think that they're a little bit stupid. Because everything they're saying is presumptuous. They have no reason to believe what they believe. It's presumptuous. It's based on an emotional response to the person they're talking to, rather than saying, okay, I have these preconceptions. I'm here to learn from you. There's not enough intention to learn in some of these conversations. And I think the broader atmosphere in regards to many of these difficult subjects, there's not enough intention to want to learn from people.
Well, I think it's also this idea of people like you and I, we're taking away from this traditionalism. You're leading women astray and making them step outside of their marriage, and I'm like seducing a man to kind of away from a life of virtue or whatever tripe you want to shove down my throat. I think these people genuinely are either sexually depressed, have not had access to it, or they're just really inadequately bad in bed.
They could be, but I also think it's a gross...
uneducated.
Yeah, absolutely that. I think it's more that because, some of it's going to be driven by the fact that they've got a particular code of ethics, and that's obviously fine. Their moral compass, if they're religious, for example, of course, they're going to have a particular reaction to sex work. But I think that it's a lack of understanding, and it's kind of like pointing your proverbial arrow at the wrong thing. It's like you want to gun down women, for example, who hire escorts, or you want to gun down escorts or whatever. It's like, why don't you try and understand what's the story there? Why is this happening? Like, why are they... if we talk about a situation that they want a safe space, they want to develop skills around boundaries. Some of these things as well, in fact, a lot of these experiences that have led women to me has been a past of negative experiences with men. So it's like, if in theory we decided, okay, our mission is to end sex work, well, the way to do it is to deal with the problems at the start. It's like, deal with that.
It's never going to happen as well.
Well, exactly. It isn't. Of course it's not.
Yeah, so let's try and get drugs as well.
It's like
stop.
if you have a problem with a solution to a problem, you need to find a better solution. That's what you need to do.
Well, we need decriminalisation.
That's 100% what we need. Yeah, 100%. I mean, it kind of is here in a way because it's... I mean, there's certain rules around escorting.
Elusive.
Yeah, you're not supposed to... I think that one of the main things is you can't solicit in public.
No.
But again, this is... for their own safety, they hang around in groups, or they might work in brothels, and that's illegal. So again, it's another one of those things where the stigma is largely impacting women.
Yeah, with brothels, probably different topic for a different podcast, but that's like a model that needs to be rejigged, I think, certainly. But of all your kind of escorting and clients, what is your most rewarding experience that you've had with an individual? And then I'm going to ask you, what's your most, oh my God, holy fuck moment? I didn't like that.
Yeah. I can tell you one that happened recently, actually, in terms of, so this is actually related to, are we talking about my coaching as well, or are we just focusing on?
We'll go into the coaching.
Okay, yeah, okay. Then I'll have to think about the escorting, because I had one in my head for the coaching.
Well, you can say it.
Okay, so one of the most rewarding experiences, I would say, is one that I had with one of my coaching clients, where
intimacy coaching.
Yeah, under my brand Pleasure Map, I also work as an intimacy and sexuality coach. So with that's helping women. The way I describe it is they're reconnecting with their sexuality, they're reconnecting with their body, and they're developing a healthy relationship with both of those things. And one of the women that I've been working with has had a real difficult time with her body, because she's had some surgeries on her body that's made it difficult for her to experience pleasure, and she's got a variety of different challenges related to her anatomy. And one of the things that really makes it difficult is the way that she's been spoken to by medical professionals, like the gaslighting that takes place, being told, oh, you'll never be normal. Like, again, it's not to say that these comments are in any way, shape or form intentional in terms of trying to make her feel bad. Of course they're not. I'm not suggesting that. So you're like, this is a person's whole life you're talking about, and you can't just say things like that. It's just throwaway comments. Oh, you'll never be normal. Oh, you shouldn't do this. Even when she's spoken about how she experiences sex, and she's very open with these things with her doctors, because that's great. Of course, that's a great thing to do. Just being shut down about, no, you shouldn't do that. No, I wouldn't. No, you shouldn't really do that sort of thing. So it's not your business. Well, just because, there's a lot of stigma around things like anal sex. So with this particular person, one of the things is that that's the only way she's been able to experience pleasure while she's on her healing journey. Perfectly valid. Absolutely perfectly valid. But being gaslit by doctors, they're just like, no, you shouldn't do that. Just in a way, like she gets told off. No, you shouldn't do that sort of thing.
Yeah, without
just like
giving medical reason.
Yeah, and other things related to her experience, where the surgeries that she has, it's another case of, it's a very insensitive approach, in the sense that she'll get a letter coming through saying, oh, you got another surgery coming up. So I didn't even know I had a surgery. I had no idea I was having another surgery. I'm just getting told you're having a surgery, because what happens is that's really disempowering, because it's like she has no control over what happens to her body. And that's been her whole experience.
Yeah.
So anyway, without going into too much more into that, the point is that she's really come along on her journey, and she's really, really started to regain control over her body, over her sexuality. She's got a really expansive, for want of a better term, repertoire of sexual skills and sexual awareness and sex education that she's developed.
The sex CV.
The sex CVs, yeah, it's hard to get it on 2 pages. It's like they always say keep it 2 pages, don't they? The sex CV, not the sex CV, they don't. But
later in the podcast, we're going to go into our sexual CV.
Oh, right, okay, bloody hell, okay, that's going to be interesting. She sent me a little card at Christmas, and it was very nice. It was just a gratitude card, like a thank you card, and it was great, because I think one of the things that's really interesting about this coaching work, and one of the exciting things, is it's never clear what the journey is going to look like. You kind of figure out what needs to be done, and you get an idea of the process, but you never know what the journey is really going to be like, and how it's going to unfold, and how somebody's going to kind of grow and evolve. So when you go from the beginning, and you're on that journey, and there's those incremental changes, then when you get to the end, and you can look back with them, and you see how much they've grown, it's just incredible. Like, it's just incredible, especially when you meet someone they feel like they have no idea what they're going to do. They don't know how to start. They don't feel confident anything's going to happen, because their experience has been that they're trying to deal with these problems has not resulted in anything. And so to be with them on that journey, and get to that point where they can look back and be like, yeah, I've grown a lot, and I feel so much better and more confident. There's literally nothing better than that.
And just a safe place to workshop a problem. I think that in your intimacy coaching is probably a massive appeal to people. Shout out to the therapists. We love you. And there's probably a lot of really good technical sexual therapists who are very well versed, well educated clinically and practiced. But someone like yourself, the hours you must have raked up by the escorting of meeting people, interacting, understanding, decoding that human interaction of desire, lust, rejection, fear. You can integrate that without even going into a sexual service now with your intimacy coaching. You can say, well, I've seen X amount of people and I know the outcome of this is because of that. And that's such a powerful thing. And again, like we said with a sexual CV, you know, people would never take it seriously unless you and I were looking at each other right now and we know what that means, you know?
Yeah. Obviously, well, one thing that I want to do is to also draw the distinction between the escorting and the coaching, because they are different. There's crossovers, but they are different. So the way I describe it really is, as an escort, I'm providing a service, or I'm curating an experience. So that can be going on holiday, for example, dinner, could include intimacy, but it's about an experience. Whereas the coaching, really what it's about personal development, skills development, overcoming a barrier that's preventing them from having the sex life that they want. So there's crossover. I always say there's crossover in terms of it's all rooted in consent. It's all about helping the client fulfill their own needs. It's always client-centered. So those things are obviously really, really important.
People listening to this podcast will want to know, who are these women? What do they look like? Because there's always this curiosity about who the consumer is. And you set an age bracket there of kind of, you know, your 40s, 50s on a mean average is what it would be. But what are the key drivers of why a woman would go and see a male escort, if you can say it in its most
succinct way?
Yeah.
So again, if we're talking about the escorting as I describe it as being about an experience, so there's two ways that could be. It could be that you want to meet with someone that you can build trust with, someone who's going to understand and respect your boundaries, someone who's going to create a safe space, someone they're going to feel comfortable with, and that with the intention of that involving sex and intimacy. Obviously the same with traveling. You're going to want someone who's going to take care of everything, someone who's going to be just really on the ball with all that stuff.
So they're lacking in their whether it's the relationship they already have or what they've had that's lacking.
No, this is an interesting question, because this is also one of the misconceptions. It's not it's not their relationship that's lacking. It's not their dating life that's necessarily lacking. It's the dating scene itself sometimes. So if it's like, well, I don't want to go on a date with someone off these bloody apps because they're a nightmare and I'm done with them.
They're all horn dogs.
They might message me and start with that. I'm so sick of these dating apps. They're full of shit. And I'm not saying it's always like that, but that's been, some of the experiences. So I just want to go somewhere. I'm going to say what I want, get my needs met. Or also, the thing that's also worth remembering is that obviously it's not always about sex. So it might be a case of, I literally want to go on a date and not have sex. That's what I want. I don't want to sit on a date and have to worry about what the man's thinking. I don't want to worry about that because we have a discussion. This is our agreement and I trust that you're going to stick to our agreement. Great.
Then what can men do more to make women happier in intimacy in the bedroom then?
Well, listening is one of the greatest skills that you will ever have. Active listening. Trying to understand people.
Unless you're deaf.
Unless you're deaf.
Then lip
active
read.
Looking. Look with intent. And just trying to really understand. And I think, do you know what? One of the greatest skills that you can develop, and this is always an ongoing process. My own process of this is, I think I mentioned to you before that one of the books I'm reading at the moment is Atomic Habits. So I'm always trying to self-develop and trying to deepen those skills. And I think that, I've developed a good emotional intelligence over the years. And I think that's been really, really, really great because it helps you have an awareness of how you're reacting to particular situations. So when something's coming up and I watch something or I read something and it has an emotional reaction inside of me, you can bring awareness to that. So what is it that this is related to? So developing a deeper emotional awareness is one of the skills I would say is really important to enhance your connections, whether that's in a relationship or anywhere. definitely deepen your listening skills, become a really, really good listener, and really take on board what people are saying to you, and be empathetic. Empathy is one of the greatest skills you can have, because it's easy to listen to someone else's story, and there's a lot of stuff we hear in the media that we can say is just bullshit. It's easy to listen to other people's stories and straight away think, oh, this is rubbish, I've heard this before, but trying to understand why that person has come to a particular conclusion, for example.
And empathy does not mean necessarily you agree with something.
Yeah. Oh, empathy is not agreeability in any way, shape or form. It's, of course you can agree with someone, but empathy is about, to some extent, you know, if you come to me and you have an experience because you've been offended in some way about something, me looking at that situation and thinking, well, I think that's an overreaction. It's not me just saying, oh, you're overreacting, blah, blah, blah. It's me saying, well, I don't understand. I wouldn't necessarily feel that way, but I understand why you would feel that way. And it's about trying to come at things from a different perspective that isn't just rooted in your own perception.
And if we solve what you're saying there of kind of empathy and listening, this stops a lot of projection, because we take our baggage and we project it onto the next willing victim in our relationships and say,
yeah,
well,
100%.
You've done this and I have a history of this, so it must mean that you're going to do this. And
yeah,
I'm in a relationship, once someone does something wrong, and I think it is right sometimes to bin people off as soon as they cross your boundaries, but I'm just always looking for a way out. I'm just always looking for that kind of thing to write them off with and go, like,
yeah,
you know.
Well, that's obviously rooted in your experience.
Baggage.
Yeah, exactly. And part of that's going to be unconscious bias. So your unconscious bias being, you know, when something...
And safety.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. But that's why you have that particular unconscious bias, I think, because your brain's telling you the safest thing is to react this way, because my experience has told me that this is how it works and this is the way that it leads. So that's what that unconscious bias is doing, I think. It's protecting you. So it's partly that.
But it's better to be safe than sorry.
100%. Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah.
But you also have to put yourself out there in order to get something. It's like risk versus reward.
Yeah.
You know, you have to go on these dates and have the car crashes to find something that might be good for you.
Yeah.
You know,
it's just that situation of again, having that self-awareness to say, okay, I have an emotional reaction to this. Like, you might see something that annoys you. Could be anything, because you've seen something similar, or there's been a similar experience that just annoys you. It's having that awareness where it's like, right, okay, it's okay to feel like that, but if I'm going to engage in any way, and this is something I think people should learn with social media, when you see things on social media that trigger you, ask yourself, okay, if I'm going to engage in any way, I need to really think about what's happening here. Is my reaction emotional? Is it logical? Why am I reacting the way that I'm reacting? And, you know, these kinds of self-awareness skills are things that are going to inherently increase your connections, including in your relationship. So if someone's getting annoyed because something's happened, it's like, okay, where has this come from? What is the root of this? And, you know, approach with empathy rather than just being, oh, you're being ridiculous, you're overthinking it, blah, blah, blah. Have a conversation. Why does this person feel like this?
Yeah. Starting
from that place. And I think everybody's guilty of it, right? I'm guilty of it too when I get frustrated. I'm not saying that I'm some sort of superhuman. This work is ongoing for me. But it's like sometimes we start up here in the defense mode, when it's like, let's start down here. My partner, my friend or whatever is frustrated. Let's give them the air and the space to kind of talk about this and try and understand where they're coming from, rather than just being, oh, you're just being fucking annoying.
Yeah.
And then just, because that doesn't help connection at all. That doesn't help at all. That does the exact opposite.
Yeah, literally. Well, we're going to have a break now. And then after the break, we're going to get into some more personal stuff. So
Okey-dokey.
Tune in after the break.
I had someone call me daddy once.
Really? Were they older or were they younger?
Younger. In the early 20s.
Okay.
I didn't expect it was going to happen. I mean, it's not exactly the most outlandish taboo thing, but when it starts happening during sex, you're thinking, I don't know what I think about that. I know, I do know what I think about it. I'm not a fan.
Did you feel like a daddy?
No, I didn't. No.
Was that a kink?
That's probably a good thing.
What are some weirdest kinks you've come across, like from clients?
From clients,
like niche, not weird, because no kink is weird unless it's illegal. There's
niche ones. I mean, I've done, decent share of bondage, which is, you know, that's not really
Shibari.
niche. Shibari, I like a bit of that. I quite like the artistry. I'm not exactly an expert in that by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been asked a number of weird things that I've not done. The weirdest one, and I talked about this before on my first podcast. The weirdest one that I probably have been asked is, I remember being in some sort of supermarket, and I got a text message from someone saying, "Oh, you know, I want to meet up with you, and you're just going to feed me. I'll pay you to feed me." And I'm thinking, what a great gig. Like, just got to feed someone. Honestly, that's just like the best thing in the world. But you know, it was a scat fetish, basically.
What's a scat?
That involves feces. So I basically poop in her mouth.
Oh, okay.
And the thing that I find funny about this story, so again, let her down gently. Sorry, that's not my sort of thing. You know, all the best with your search. Is that she then said, okay, how about a foot massage? And the thing that I find funny about it is, why not start with the foot massage and see where your edges are and work your way up? Don't go, would you like to shit in my mouth? No. Well, how about a foot massage then? Because I'm obviously not going to go, yeah, okay, you've charmed me.
That woman doesn't know how to manipulate.
No. Manipulate or how to woo. She wasn't doing a very good job of wooing me.
The feces thing is popular. I know of a stripper who did a shit on a man's chest for $3,000.
Yeah, I'd do that. Probably do that.
Wow, your audio bar just went up.
Sorry, that was one of my erratic laughs.
No.
You can turn that down though, right?
No, because I need to hear. Okay. Well, so let's get more into the personal. Okay, let's deep dive. Have you had a relationship whilst you're doing this job?
No, I haven't had a relationship while I'm doing this job. I think all of my needs in various aspects of my life are so fulfilled. It's
met.
kind of, met. I get my different needs met in different areas in different ways. And I just don't have a particular desire for a relationship. And I think that I've always been like that. I've never been someone... I think that all of us could probably think of friends that are always in a relationship. So when the relationship ends, they're like, okay, I want to get a girlfriend, I want to get a boyfriend, and they're on to the next thing, and that's fine for them. I've never been like that. I've never pursued it. I've never thought, like, oh, I really want to get a girlfriend. It's just not how I think.
Does it appeal to you, like the kids, family, Labrador, mortgage? No.
I've had a vasectomy anyway, so there's no kid.
It's probably good for your
manufacturing.
job. Yeah,
what it's called, making. But I mean, again, it wasn't a job related thing. It was a life related thing. It's a commitment I made to myself. That's what I want. I thought about it, and you know, no looking back. It's you know, I'm not interested in having children and never have been.
You don't want to MILF someone up.
I do it, but not if there's kids involved.
Okay.
So it doesn't count.
Yeah, if you're not creating the life, then it doesn't count.
Yeah.
Do your family know what you do?
Yep.
How did that go down? What's the story there?
That went down pretty well, I'd say.
Did they have suspicions?
No, I mean, there's no suspicions at all. So I, you know, the way that I told my mum and dad was quite interesting. So the interesting thing with my mum was, when I told her, I said, oh, I'm an escort, and she grimaced, like her face. she kind of was like, you know, and I was like, okay.
I wanted you to be a lawyer.
I said, yeah, right. So I said to her, okay, what do you think that means? Just to give, again, in a way, it's kind of the empathy thing, isn't it? It's like, let me get her perspective and where she's coming from. And she explained what it was, and like, you know, you just get paid to have sex with people. And I was like, well, no, it's not that. It's much more than that. And I explained it and how it works, and you know, why women hire escorts. I think it's always important, actually, when I talk about this work, to talk about the reason that as we have done, why women hire escorts, because that's really what it's all about. It's the client first situation. And she was understanding, and from that point, every now and again she would say, oh, how are you doing, like, oh, have you got any work coming up, are you traveling anywhere, you know, not really asking for explicit details, but she was genuinely interested. With my dad's situation was that for a long time I didn't have a good relationship with him. Like, we just kind of, we were just at each other's throats. We clashed a lot. So when I moved out of his place, the relationship was kind of, it was damaged. And actually what happened to help me address that relationship was, so one of my side shoots, one of my side interests in my personal life is psychedelic therapy and psychedelic research. So I've got quite an interest in that. And I had a psychedelic experience. I did magic mushrooms. And what actually happened on that experience was it brought to the foreground the fact that I'm not happy with the relationship I have with my dad. Now, that probably sounds like, well, I already knew that. But actually what was happening was, because I didn't get on with my dad, I didn't see any value in it. I was like, oh, whatever, just leave that to be what it is. I didn't really see any value in addressing it. Yeah, whatever. It's just, I can't be bothered with it. But it actually it came to the fore and made me realize I'm not happy with it being like that, actually. That's not the way it should be. So I approached him and addressed him. And when chatting to him and dealing with that situation and having that open conversation, part of that was telling him about my experimentation with psychedelics and my interest in psychedelic therapy and that work, and also the fact that I escort. And he was just very open. It in. Yeah, not like
Dad, by the way, I do magic mushrooms and escort.
Yeah, one of the great things about doing magic mushrooms and escorting is that so he was very open, and I think that one of the things is that, you know, as I've matured emotionally, I guess you could say, one of the things I came to establish, well, actually the thing with my dad is our issues, whatever it is, it's not bad enough to not have a relationship. Those little things, us clashing, he's flawed, I'm flawed. It's not enough for us to not have a good relationship.
Yeah.
And actually, in having that conversation there, not only was that an opportunity to open up, but it made me realize all he really wants from me is to connect with me. That's all he really wants. That's what's been lacking there. And he's got his own guard up. He's got his own barrier up. He's got his own defenses. And again, as I've kind of learnt more about him and learnt more about the work I do and from the people that I meet, some of that's rooted in his own trauma. The way he reacts, the way he would get angry really easily, that's rooted in his own trauma.
I think a really interesting thing, an exercise for a lot of people to do, is if you don't particularly get on with your parent or a parent or someone of that kind, and then you look at the grandparent, you're going to get the lovey-dovey version of the grandparent usually, because grandparents love their grandkids. But try and understand who that grandparent / parent was to your parent.
Yeah, trying to understand.
And you'll see similarities very quick.
Yeah, it's and again, having that openness of being like, okay, it's not to say anybody, if your parents are really mean on you and harsh, that you should just be so empathetic that you just disregard the impact that it has on you. It's not about doing that. But being as an adult now and having the agency over my own life, I'm able to look from the outside in and say, okay, my dad had trauma. I know he did. He was bullied when he was younger. He felt insufficient. He felt insecure. These things manifested in the way he behaved. They impacted me. So things like that. The same with my mum. You know, I had a bit of a mixed relationship with her. Didn't fall out, but she wasn't particularly, and my nan said this to me once, I never thought about it. She said, oh, when you were growing up, your mum wasn't particularly like physically affectionate. And it wasn't a criticism, it was an observation. And I realised, actually, that's so true. We didn't really ever cuddle. And I came to establish what I think that's related to her own trauma, her own history of child abuse and being abused as a child, and how that's impacted her and how she connects with people. And I think that what's really important about doing that is it helps you move towards a place where you're like, this isn't about me. This disconnect isn't about me. It's not even about them. Do you know what I mean? Like, us not connecting, it's not because there's anything wrong with either of us. Our own shit's getting in our way, you know?
But as a child, you're always going to take it as a you
100%.
thing.
I mean, even if I was to go so far and have the boldness to have the empathy for my stepdad, who was cruel to me. He wasn't physically abusive, and at the time it didn't have a name. I remember watching the TV at my mum's house when I was older, and they were doing this piece on a dispatches thing or something like that. And they were talking about...
Love that, dispatches.
Well, it was something like they were talking about emotional child abuse. And I was like, holy shit, that is the thing that happened to me. That's the experience that I had, the gaslighting and all of this kind. Even gaslighting, it wasn't until probably within the last 3 years I even knew what the hell gaslighting was. I'd never heard of it.
It's a hot word at the moment.
Yeah, that's what happened to me. I was made to feel small. He was intimidating. He was like really mean to me. He was like really cold to me, said things and acted around me in certain ways. It just made me feel like really insecure and insufficient. And then you start questioning yourself because of his behavior, and like, maybe it's just me. Maybe this is how he is. Maybe it's a stepdad thing. Stepdad's like supposed to be like that, or maybe dads are supposed to be like that. And then it makes it hard to talk about because you just start internalizing it.
But when you're young, you don't have the emotional tool belt to deal with that.
No, you don't.
So when you have your own space, when you're older, and this is why I advise people to like get on with their lives and create the lives they want.
Yeah.
is because you have that safe space of your own home to go and retrieve it in and
Yeah.
stuff.
I think it's one of the most this is actually one of the things that I've done over the years, and one of the things, as I say, is an ongoing process, that kind of self-reflection. And one of the things I'm actually working on at the moment for myself is a thing called shadow work. So shadow work, I don't know if you've heard of that, but that's this idea that we all have these shadow parts of ourselves that we hide and we repress. It could be something, an example could be something like you used to like dancing as a child, but you were made to feel like you were an idiot when you danced, or just as you're turning your eyes. Maybe that doesn't directly relate to you, but as as a random example, it could be that you're worried about how you present in front of people. You're worried about being embarrassing yourself. The point is that that's linked to something. So you create this part of yourself that you hide away, because then that way you're protecting yourself. So the point is the purpose of shadow work is it's addressing those points and bringing them up. Now, one of the things that I can actually be open about that I do...
I don't have any of those.
Yeah, if you really dug deep... Well, I mean, I'm probably not explaining shadow work to the best of its ability. There's lots of things you don't think about.
I have kinks, maybe, I wouldn't say.
They could be the shadow things. It's also important to establish the shadow isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's not saying that it's a dark part of you. It's the things that you kind of have hidden away that you don't necessarily address.
The only thing I feel very I just get embarrassed. I get embarrassed when I don't look intelligent. So I'm dyslexic. So whenever a opportunity comes where I'm just not going to read as quickly as someone or whatever, or I say something a bit blonde or whatever, and I feel stupid, I feel that's the end of the world. So maybe just the ability to just try something, maybe.
So this book I read recently is called A Little Book on the Shadow.
Yeah.
By a guy called Robert Bly.
Yeah.
And he talks, the way he analogizes this is he talks about it as being like the bags we drag behind us. So we've got these massive bags where all of our shadow parts are.
Yeah.
And even though they're behind us and they're like shadows and we kind of try to ignore them, they impact us because they weigh us down. So shadow work is about looking at those parts of us that hold us back and saying, this is an aspect of my life that you might not acknowledge. Like if you're an avoider, you avoid situations because you're like, oh, that's difficult. It's like the shadow work gives you an opportunity to say, what is it that makes me avoid doing that when it would benefit me to do that? So you can address it. You bring it to the fore and you can address it.
I'm gelling with what you're saying, but it also reminds me of exposure therapy a little bit, or like it could lead to that way. Because I believe that if there's obviously some things that traumatize people and they should never really go back to it because it's not a good thing. Yeah. But that idea of confronting things. Yeah. So for obvious things like swimming in deep water, maybe swim in a deep side of a swimming pool and expose yourself so you're less scared of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But maybe for me, like if it's a fear of, people thinking I'm stupid or an idiot, maybe I just say something and not give a shit, and that's like a form of exposure therapy. Yeah,
I guess so. I suppose, I mean, I don't know a great deal about exposure therapy, and again, the shadow work's new to me, so I probably didn't articulate it in the best possible way. So, an opportunity for you to look it up in more depth. But I suppose that if I was to compare them, maybe exposure therapy is like you say, the deep end aspect. That's kind of a good metaphor as well. It's like jumping in at the deep end, whereas the shadow work is like saying, okay, you've got your trauma. You don't need to kind of dive straight into that and have that potentially really intense experience. It's like saying, what are the aspects that have accumulated and how does it impact your life? If you've been made to feel small and inadequate and you don't feel like you're good enough, like that perhaps is an aspect of yourself that means that you avoid doing situations where you can grow.
Well, a big one for women, I think, is not like a fear, or maybe you wouldn't describe it as a shadow, is body image. And women are all different shapes and sizes, just as men are. We're all different and unique. But as a woman, I can speak that a lot of women have insecurities about their body. I'm sure you know that doing the work you do. But for me, it's just like, sometimes that could be, just cut that parachute and just don't carry the weight around.
Yeah, and that's
no
a good way to go.
But
that's a good way to go. But again, it's like back to the atomic habit situation, where for some people it's about doing things incrementally.
Yeah.
Because just being like, I'm just going to cut the parachute cord and it's going to be fine. Like some people, that's too heavy.
I am
it's
that.
too intense. Yeah.
I am that woman.
It's admirable if you can do that.
It takes me a while.
Yeah.
It's like that song, I'm off the deep end. Watch your side.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think what's interesting about that is that whilst that's admirable and you can do it, most people can't. But I think that's most people's perception of how it works. Like, you have to just do this. You have to just, people don't understand that it's like, well, you don't have to do that. You can kind of build things up bit by bit. And
are you incremental or parachuter?
I liked the idea of being a parachuter, but this is the thing about the difference between we talked about the goal versus the systems, focusing on the process rather than focusing on the goal. Because what you do is you build a process that's healthy, that's going to help you get to the goal, rather than saying, I want to get here, and really focusing on that goal. So I've been goal focused, and I think being goal focused has been one of the reasons for failing in certain goals. Whereas now I'm like, I'll give you an example. So with my snooker, I'm a massive snooker fan, and I play snooker a lot. And it's one of those things with me. I'm a pain in my own arse, and the reason I'm a pain in my
own... Is it the snooker cue? Is that one of the kinks?
No. Yeah. I like to see how many balls I can fit up my anus before I burst.
Maybe we're dusting it off, not with the blue, but with the brown.
Yeah. Oh, good Lord.
Looking good in that waistcoat.
yeah, a bit bulgy, but I lost my train of thought now.
You love snooker?
Yeah, so, and with the things I enjoy, I think for me personally, a natural part of that is wanting to improve. Like, I like that process when I start to improve. That's part of the joy for me. But last year and for a while, I was so focused on the goals. Like, I want to improve in this way. I want to get to this goal. I want to improve my cue ball control. I want to improve my shot power. That's kind of... it's non-specific, and the issue with that is it's like, what does that even look like? And I realized I need to really go back to basics and rebuild my technique and build things incrementally. And I've only started
steps,
back to focusing on those little atomic habits. And I used to be relatively regimented with my practice, where I'd plan out my practice, I'd go through certain steps, follow a certain process. Let's say, for example, I do a certain shot, how many times do I get it out of 10? Use that, put it in a little spreadsheet. I know it's really geeky, but then I can track my progress. And I stopped doing that. I'd do the drills, but I was just going there, and then I was getting frustrated because I wasn't really doing it properly and it wasn't getting the results. So this year I was like, right, first thing, focus on rebuilding your technique. And I've only been in 4 or 5 sessions to the start of this year, but already my technique has significantly improved. Significantly. Like, it's better than it's ever been, because I've been very specific about what I'm trying to achieve and saying, well, I know I want to get better and I want to win these leagues that I'm in, which I have no chance of at the moment. But all I've done is just say, well, that's the end goal. And this is what I talk to my clients about. I say, we know where we want to get to, but let's remember there's a whole journey to get there. And let's curate something that's going to be an enjoyable experience.
And by the way, I know there are some listeners out there who do message me on the socials, and you guys like to share a little bit about your sex life, which I appreciate. But you have these like kind of fears sometimes about kinks, or I'm scared to do this or that. No one's saying just because I like to cut the parachute and do it balls to the wall doesn't mean you have to. You know, like Seb said, you could also, let's say, like, what's like a kink that people would want to try?
Well, even just,
I don't want to out anyone.
Well, just like something that I guess is quite common, something like bondage, just using a bit of shibari and a bit of rope tying. And
okay, so we've just said that, and that's all quite alienating to a novice, isn't it? Like, but maybe just start with a handcuff.
100%.
Start with one piece of rope.
100%. And this is the thing with my clients. This is one of the things that even at the stage when they first contact me as a coach, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how I'm supposed to do this. I don't know all this kind of stuff. Because, and this is a good thing in some sense, the world of sex and sexuality is very vast. It's a big ocean with a lot in it. So when you look at the bigger picture and you see that there's so many possibilities, that's very overwhelming. Even for me as a practitioner, when I think about all the things I want to learn, and it's one of the things that is, I think, a negative side of being curious and being a little bit autodidactic and wanting to learn all the time. I'm like, I want to learn this, I want to learn this, I want to learn this. And I'm kind of have this massive picture of all these things, and it just gets too much. And it's like, you can't do all of that at once. So it's choose something. If you're interested in kink, inquire into that. What is it about the kink that you find interesting? Well, I'm interested in, I like a little bit of the rope tying. Start off small, choose a couple of basic knots, some of the foundations, and kind of see what you can learn, you know, and just kind of build up.
Yeah. Or even if you want to, like, I'm sure there's many women who come to you who say, I can't orgasm. I want you to help me orgasm.
Yeah. But that's a perfect example because that's specifically a goal thing.
Yeah.
The orgasm being a goal. So that's when it's like, you know, you have a little conversation with them and get some sense of what their experience with sex has been. And then you might find from a conversation, well, actually, one of the things that isn't helping is your experience of sex. The way you're having sex doesn't suit you. You know, I'll give you an example of somebody that I coached where she was saying to me, oh, this isn't related to orgasm, but actually it's just related to her perception and her experience of sex. So her former partner, she was basically had been sexually assaulted. She was raped, basically. And her experience that she had, that wasn't her partner. It was outside of her relationship. But then whenever she would have sex with her partner, she said she would just go into a freeze response. She just fully froze. And what was interesting is it came to realize that the kind of sex that she was having with her partner was really quick, really rushed, orgasm focused, was perhaps too indicative or too relatable to the traumatic experience that she had. It was far too quick for her. So she needed an experience that was really about slowing down and not being goal focused, not being orgasm focused, and not being, well, about just
let's
her
get
partner.
it over and done with. And
in just doing that and having that conversation, understanding the boundaries, and me proactively trying to understand her triggers and creating an environment that's going to be slow paced, it completely, just in one encounter, changed her experience of sex, because she realized, shit, this is like nothing to do with me. This is not like my thing where I'm unable to have sex, or like, you know, all of these negative things that come up where she thinks that this is related to who I am and how I'm able to have sex and I'm not very good at this, that and the other. It's not that. It's because actually what's happening is you're not having the kind of sex that's suitable for you.
Well, I had a bit of a sexual mental breakdown in lockdown. I always was able to orgasm from like my late teens, you know? And then I probably got to like age, how old was I at the time? Probably around about 21, 22. And just because of lockdown, I just didn't masturbate for a long, long time. And I know I orgasmed last time because the last guy I had sex with before lockdown, it was very good. I had a puddle.
You left the window open.
He was a South
It's raining.
He was a South African Dutch rugby player.
He
was 6'4", and he was a prop. So my rugby friends know what that is. And he was like a fucking animal. Like literally, it was like a fucking hose. Anyway.
Holy moly.
Anyway, after that, I don't know what happened, and I still have trouble with today. I think stripping did actually mentally not affect me because I'm still able to do it, but like it's definitely changed my sexual attitude and temperature. Because I couldn't like, it felt too intense before I orgasmed after lockdown whenever I tried. And even like sometimes I found myself doing it, and before it I cry before I orgasm, and that's actually quite common to cry before you orgasm sometimes. And I was like, well, I do have trauma, but I could do it before, so I don't think that is key to it. But even now I'm on my own journey of like reconnecting with myself and thinking, well, what I liked in the past isn't what I like now, and I'm a different person and I like different sexual things now, and I've had a massive experience of like having to emotionally, not physically, but like emotionally whore myself out to people. So orgasming is going to be a bit different. So I need to go on my journey and understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe I need to hire an escort or an intimacy coach.
And whatever format that looks like, trying to get an understanding of either trying to explore yourself or find someone who can help you explore what it is that you need. What do you need? You know, like in terms of your environment, your setup, what's going to make the experience, you know, really good for you and conducive to you kind of going on that process of evolution.
I don't know. It's not an everyday problem. It's just a sometimes problem. So I think it's just, I actually think once I'm out of dancing, probably one day I will be more happier and stuff. Because I just like, if someone just finds me sexy visually, it doesn't get me off. Like it's this is where like if you can get inside of my head, then that's probably more interesting for me. I just think the main thing is like you need to backtrack and work out if you have like a problem or a sexual desire, how, okay, there's a problem, acknowledge how can I change it, the steps to change it, and then just work from there and be gentle with yourself.
Yeah, that's the right word. That's what I was going to say as well about self-compassion. you know, that's one of the most important tools you can have, because it's so easy to beat yourself up. And you know, I've as I say, when I was playing snooker and I wasn't progressing on my practice, I just get so frustrated with myself. But it's kind of like, well, and one of the things I said to myself starting this year, just in terms of self-compassion, just remember that I know that I'm rebuilding my technique from scratch.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to make loads of mistakes, and it's kind of a weird goal. A weird goal of trying to change the way I'm getting it wrong, like become consistent. So I'm doing if it's certain things are being done wrong, it's consistent. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm making the same mistakes rather than keep trying to change everything and not really knowing what's going wrong, because then I can really highlight what the issue is and work on it.
It's all data. It's all incremental.
Yeah, exactly. Get all of that data. Yeah.
But women are not necessarily... That sounds really bad. I was going to say, like, women are more feeling led and men are more... There's that saying of men are more interested by things and women are more interested by people on a whole.
Yeah.
And like sometimes when it comes to sexual problems, I'm just like, I just want to feel like it's better rather than doing the incremental change. But you need to do the incremental change.
Yeah.
Something I was going to ask you about was, we mentioned body image earlier. With escorting and that kind of competitive nature, because we're based in London, do you ever feel like a pressure to like keep up with a certain look in escorting, or do you feel very comfortable with who you are, what you're offering to your client? Leave it open-ended.
Yeah, 100% the latter. I think one of the important things when I started working as an escort, one of the mantras, I suppose, that I set myself was, you know, just kind of be myself as much as possible and present myself as authentically as possible. And because I just figured that people will then contact me with an interest in who I am, rather than... It's one thing role playing when you meet someone, you know, in terms of in the bedroom. It's another thing trying to put on a whole front and whole persona to try and attract certain people. I didn't have an interest in doing that. And I think that being able to present myself the way that I am, you know, I'm not super ripped. You might say I've got a dad bod. Maybe.
No, I've seen dad bods.
Well, all right.
You're
maybe I
in
haven't
shape.
got one. Yeah. But, you know, nice photos of myself, present myself, my personality and who I am, and people will connect with me on that basis. So there's no reason to try and shape myself to, you know, be super muscly, or, you know, not just physically shape myself, but try and mold myself to look a certain way.
Well, the customer will always want different things.
Well, that's it. This is one of the things I said to one of my friends who's a painter. You know, his art's really, really good. And, you know, some of the criticism he gets from people
Criticism.
His criticism turned into Elmer Fudd there a little bit. Some of the criticism...
You sounded like Bane out of Batman
then. Some of the criticism he gets from people that he doesn't know, and you know, we all take on other people's shit, right? People criticize us about various things. Like I was saying about the sun thing. When I looked at those comments, they impacted me a little bit.
Never look at the Sun or the Daily Mail comments.
Never write for it either, by the way. But my point was that you look at that and you think, oh, it knocks you a little bit. But, you know, the thing that I said to my friend who's an artist, there's no point in pinning your self-worth on other people's opinions. You have to work from a place of authenticity, because their opinions are moving goalposts. And also, if you're going to pin your self-worth and your beliefs in yourself on somebody else, who are you going to choose? Because they've got so many different opinions. Some people like it, some people don't. And we kind of, as humans, have this inclination to almost lean in more to the negative and be like, oh, but why don't people like it this way? It's like, yeah, but what all the people that do? What about you and how you felt when you created whatever it is you created? That's where you start from. And anybody's going to connect to it is going to connect to it because there's an aspect of your authentic self in there that they relate to. They relate to the real, genuine work. That's all that matters.
Well, when I looked at your pictures online, because, you know, I had to find you from somewhere, when I looked through the profile...
You were disappointed?
No. If I looked at your profile, obviously, like, it's got a bit of moodiness and, like, it's sexy.
Thank you.
Well done.
Yeah, you saved yourself there.
But it's... If I was to put it on a dating app, it would look more well done than a normal profile. But I wouldn't be able to go, that's an escort. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have a stereotype of what that looks like. And to be honest, in my mind, I was thinking just the body shot and just kind of more showy offy. But yours is more kind of not conservative, but more tasteful.
Yeah.
more je ne sais quoi.
Oh, thank you. That's a
Yeah.
good way to put it. And again, you know, there's no point in me getting my 1 pack out. Nobody wants to see that.
I mean, have you met other escorts where it's like Alejandro with the 8-pack and the oil and stuff?
No, I've only spoken to a couple of escorts here and there. There's a guy, an Italian guy I know, and there's another guy, a Dutch guy who's no longer escorting, but they don't fit into that mold either.
Yeah.
And I think that for those guys, I feel like if I was just like, I wanted to make a quick buck on the side and I was super muscly, just the body shot, no headshot, I can understand that would be probably ideal for that. That would be great.
I think that would turn me off.
Yeah, but I mean, there's obviously people who hire people like that, and it might be a fantasy thing. Just get another big muscly guy involved, someone who's dominant or whatever it might be, as an example.
I think the gays would prefer that more than the women.
The gays, like a band.
No, but I do like, because men are visual. Just because they want to have sex with a man doesn't mean that principle doesn't still apply.
Yeah, and I must admit that I would say most of the women I've spoken to where that's been a topic of discussion have said they don't find that attractive. Some of them find it intimidating even.
Well, I will be real. Why I find it intimidating is if a man has an overdone 6 or 8-pack, they're probably not enjoying their life that much in terms of like food and leisure. They have a strict routine. And I'm not there, and I'm not prepared to put up with that or do that commitment. So it's an insecurity actually of mine.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
But some people are naturally just more built and some people aren't, and you know, it's the world.
I mean, it'd be great if we were all naturally built like that, but then the competition would be even more difficult, isn't it? But that's also the other thing. You know, if you're going to create yourself to fit a specific mold that you perceive to be the ideal example of what an escort's supposed to be, you're competing with a lot of other people. Like, you go on that website and there's a lot of guys who have got their shirt off and got their chest out, and you know, they've got great bodies, but there's loads of people with those photos. Well, but it's more, for me, it's more the fact that you're competing in a saturated market. The best thing you can possibly do is just present yourself and your authentic self, because people will want to know. And I know that people would say, oh, I don't really want to connect that well with clients. That's fine. It's not about saying that, but they still want to know who they're meeting. Like, it's just a profile talking about yourself a little bit and who you are, and you want to present yourself as someone they could have a conversation with, I think, at least.
Physical preferences are a weird one. Like, I always think that you have to have still, it sounds like a bit weird to say it for like humans who work in the sex industry, you have to have a USP. Yeah. And you have to have it within you, and you have to have it externally. Now, you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but for example, I have very large breasts, so that's what I lead with externally in a strip club. Yeah. But once that's...
Well, you have to. You don't really have a choice, do you? They're on the front.
Well, obviously. I'm not going to hide them there. It's not
have you ever thought about walking backwards into work from now on?
No, because my arse is sensational too. So...
It's just saying an element of surprise.
We have lots of software engineers who come in because apparently they love the strip club. And you know the term front stack and back stack of a website?
Yeah.
So the front end and the back end. And I say... Hey boys, I have front stack and back stack. I can play with your pythons.
Brilliant.
But you have to have something physically in terms of attraction from a stripper and an escort. I'll say my bit and then you can obviously say your bit. In terms of just attracting someone, you have to have something physically that's going to bring you in, like eye-catching, because that's the first thing that you need to draw attention to yourself. And then you have to have something inside that's going to like affirm that attraction and point someone more in the direction of intrigue. That's my take on it.
Yeah.
So something physical and something internal.
Well, yeah, I think so, because it's all good me saying that it's about authenticity. They will look at lots of different profiles, but at the same time, my photo is the first part. They don't read the profile then see the photo. The photo is how they get to the profile. So they obviously look at that, think that I'm attractive, and look at that and then read the profile and decide, okay, this is someone I want to get in touch with. So I think it is a combination of both.
And then we get onto your sexual CV if they've gone on the website.
I haven't got that on there.
Okay. But there's like clear things you're into and you're not into. Like, for example, when I was researching dominatrixes, their customer are looking for a specific niche kink. So they have a list of all the kinks and the things they're into and not.
I see. Yeah.
with you probably just state kind of sexually what demographics, so like in terms of gender and kind of what you focus around, like massages. I remember seeing massages.
Yeah, I think the way that I described it was I wasn't presenting it as a specific service, but I talk about myself and how that relates to me.
Yeah.
And not in a way, again, it's not about me
checklist.
boasting. Yeah, it's basically saying, you know, I love to learn. I'm always exploring new things, and developing martial arts skills has been something that, you know, these things that contribute to what I can offer, but also relative to me and how they relate to me.
And a sexual CV doesn't mean like, oh, I do anal and I'm a finger blaster and da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
It can be like, I'm a good listener and I'm patient.
Yeah, I think it's important in some aspect to focus on, I guess you could call those the soft skills.
Yeah.
Because it's like, this is the first port of call. It's like, if we're going to sit down and have a conversation that's prospectively going to lead to intimacy, you want to feel like you can have a conversation with me and you're going to feel safe, and all of the other stuff that's important first, rather than me just knocking on the door, walking in, doing my thing and then going home. And then
you're obviously very emotionally satisfied by the kind of intimacy coaching and kind of that mental plate we were speaking about spinning earlier, and that's what gets you into it. But we're humans. We all like sex. When it turns into sex, just out of free will, is that something that you're just kind of happy about having in the job?
Yeah, what do you mean? Like, is it like it's a perk?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's definitely. Don't get me wrong. It's not like a part of the job where I'm like, oh Christ, I've got to do this again. Bloody hell.
Here we go.
Yeah, got to go through that. Yeah, it's absolutely a perk. I mean, one of the things is if you connect really, really well with someone,
you're not going to need a little pill. It's just going to be hard.
Being intimate with someone, like, this is the thing where people say, you know, like, are they always hot, the women? I mean, I literally had some guy say to me, like, when he found out I was an escort, and I think the question was underpinned by his own subtle insecurity, because the way he asked, oh, so, you know, it must be really good just having kind of sex with loads of beautiful women all the time. And I thought, well, do you really think that's what it is? And also, why are you asking me that?
Yeah.
What's your real question? But it's like, you know, it maybe sounds a bit cheesy, but being able to connect with someone is significantly more important. I've literally met with a Playboy bunny who you would consider aesthetically to be, well, you know, stunning, amazing. But we just didn't hit it off. And it makes it impossible for me, because it's like, well...
No honey for the bunny. Well,
like, sexual attraction is so deeper than, you know, physical attraction. It's like, if I can connect with someone on an intellectual level, and I feel like we really just understand each other, and she's funny, she might be funny, that's like, yeah, I'm going to be more relaxed, I'm going to open up more, and this kind of thing. And this is why building a rapport is important, because I want to establish some aspect of that. I want to, you know, build a bit of groundwork and get some sense of who I'm meeting. If you just don't have any idea, and it's like, meet me in 2 hours, yeah, right, you go and meet them, and it's just like, I know nothing about this person. It just becomes like one of the dates, the kinds of dates that I would have on Tinder, where it's swipe left, swipe right. And I remember going on a date before where I got there and I was confused. I was like, I couldn't remember who I was meeting. That's terrible. That's terrible, isn't it? That is bad. And
yeah,
also,
but names are really hard to...
Well, not the name, but it was more the fact that when I met with her and I was chatting with her, I realised I knew nothing about her. And I thought, well, if I've spoken to her, I don't recognise her from her photos, so I couldn't quite remember which person I was meeting. That is terrible. So you don't want a situation where you're like, I don't know who this person is, I haven't seen a photo of them, any of this stuff, you know, I have no information, because then it's like, well, what am I getting myself into? Bearing in mind as well, like, if I've chosen to do this and it's fully my own choosing, which it is, why would I put myself in a situation to do things I don't want to do? How
often do you go on a normal date, like not on the books, so not professional?
Like in my personal life?
Yeah, just dating.
Not very often. Yeah. It's not something I again, for me, it's always been like with a relationship situation where it's like something happens, it evolves organically. And, you know, I've been on a couple of dates this year. And I've just not really been that interested. That's like, I go out and I do something in my personal life. I think I went to a cocktail making class, which was great. I really enjoyed that. And I met a girl there.
And no casual sex, no like one night, no.
Okay. No, and again, some of these things could manifest and materialize in a way. But I'm not pursuing anything.
Well, 2 observations from that. You're already being fed in terms of like your psychosexual self through your work.
Yeah.
And number 2, in terms of that connection and just, you know, the more wholesome bit of a relationship, to an average person, because this is your life and you live and breathe it, of how to connect with people, you're miles ahead of. They're not going to be able to, like an average Joe Schmo, if I'm putting myself in a normal man's perspective, from my perspective, they're not going to know about like emotional intelligence all the time, or listening, or active listening, because we take those skills for granted, but they're skills, and not everyone, I think everyone has them, but they don't have them to the highest level. And I think when you do this job and you have a certain sophistication and understanding of connecting with someone, you almost need someone to be on par with that, and not everyone is an escort, and not everyone can understand that. I think you can say you have a very sophisticated emotional means of connecting with people.
Well, I have a heightened emotional intelligence. Yeah. I would say that's fair. Yeah.
And you don't have to feel arrogant about saying that, because
no, it's a skill that's developed. 100% it is. I agree. I think I do get what you're saying, where it's kind of like when you have that expanded awareness of anything, like you're very aware of it. It's always there. Like when you meet someone, you kind of, like when I talk about the stuff I talked about with my parents, the stuff that gets in their way and how that presents and how that impacts our relationship. So then when you see that in other people, you kind of have that curiosity, you kind of, which is great, because actually one of the benefits of developing that skill is that in and of itself, such as the emotional intelligence, that contributes to the empathy, because you're like, well, this person's getting frustrated and I have the awareness to acknowledge that might not be about me at all. And it's probably not even who they really are. There's something underneath that that's kind of, that's driving that behavior.
Yeah. And I suppose, well, what someone finds taboo, you don't find that taboo as well.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot in your life.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say I've seen a lot. It's more the fact that I've heard more than I've seen, I reckon. But it's like, yeah, when people are just kind of starting out in their sexual journey and what they would consider, and I'm not to say that, you know, they have the wrong idea of what kinky is, but, you know, they might just think something quite simple is just kind of trying loads of different positions, or, you know, having sex in the living room, or somewhere that's not, you know, and that is what that is to them, because their understanding or their experience of what is normal to them or what is vanilla to them is maybe much more, you know, pared back compared to mine or somebody else's.
I don't think I'm the most kinkiest person, but I don't think I'm vanilla. And sometimes I'll say, well, yeah, I want to have sex in a phone box. That's one of my fantasies.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're so vanilla.
Well, when you're on the phone, is it?
Maybe. Hello.
Well, I think you got to try and find a bloody phone box first. There's not many of those around.
They have to find my box, and men aren't good at finding the box. So, stigmas. Obviously, female and male escorts are both going to face stigmas, and they're going to face some of the same ones, and then through the genders they're going to face slightly different skewed ones. So for the women, it's you're a whore, you're giving away your virtue, your body's so precious, why would you give it away, you're easy, you'll do anything for money. But then what are some of the male ones specific to that gender?
Well, so if we refer to the L Classic Sun reviews, there was people saying things like, you know, and this is the irony that made me laugh, because the grammar was so bad that what he said was so ironic. He said something like escorting for people who can't get proper job or something like that. So he talked like a caveman. I was like, that's a brave sentence. That's a brave sentence to say that. It's things like that, like I'm stupid because that's why I choose to escort. And it's interesting because, again, people are entitled to their opinions, but when you see stuff like that, it's like, well, you've obviously never met an escort. You've never met someone who hires an escort, and you don't know anything about it. You clearly don't, because, you know, the escorts that I know, they're not stupid. They're intelligent.
And yeah, it is hard to find a job these days, actually. Yes.
But also in that article, I talked about my furniture work, my design work.
Okay.
And I was also doing that. So I was like, well, you've not read the article, have you? I was talking about this being a side hustle as it was at the time.
Yeah, but the sun is not there for intellectual stimulation. It's there for entertainment.
Intellectual numbing, I think.
Yeah. Skull numbing.
So yeah, like stuff that, which is, you know, the same for women as well. And I think generally speaking, that most of the stigma is definitely around female escorting, because whenever we talk about sex and sexuality and the stigma, it is mostly women.
So do you think you get fluffed up a little bit more in the equation?
Right. The way that I would look at it, if we look at male escorting versus female escorting, I would say that in terms of how that's judged, it's both about, there's an attachment of value. The attachment of value with female escorting is that you are a whore, a slut, or whatever it is, and it's a demonstration of your value as an individual in your place in society.
Of what you can keep away from people.
Well, or more specifically, how that impacts your value in relation to a man and your worth of being in a relationship with a man.
Which is all based on religion.
It's all bullshit is what it is. And with a man, it's perhaps perceived as being cool and glorified because it's a demonstration of what is perhaps a mirror of a masculine archetype. So by being someone who gets paid to have sex with lots of women, as it's perceived, as that, you know, if we used to boil it down, and that's how people perceive it for the most part, it's like, I'm an alpha. That's what it seems like. Whereas it's like, that's just nonsense. It's just nonsense. And then there may well have been a benefit and a purpose for those perceptions in our early ancestry, in terms of like typical masculine and feminine roles. You know, women are more emotionally oriented than men because there's a survival and evolutionary purpose for that. It's related to pair bonding and forming connections in community, which is necessary for the survival of offspring. So we always look to things like other apes and other primates, like as a reference, and monkeys and apes do the same thing. They have a thing called alloparenting, which is basically babysitting, where they form bonds within the female community for the purpose of looking after each other's children. And there's a benefit to that, and that's the purpose of them being in that way. Whereas the men are just kind of like, you know, testosterone, fight, kill, fuck, meat, eat, all those things. You know, some things haven't changed, basically.
And that's why we go so well together.
Yes. Yeah.
Not to say that, you know, lesbians and the gays, y'all are fine, you know.
Y'all are fine. Do your thing. Do your thing.
Do your thing. But also, like, why men and women are slightly different in hormonal profiles are because they make life. And that's also a very beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to treat you a little bit like an agony ant.
Okay.
So imagine...
Back to the sun again.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you some questions about spicing it up. Okay. So normal couple at home, she's a bit bored. He does the same thing, doesn't really veer off, you know, the traditionalism of having sex. Let's say they're in their 50s. So boomers. How would you tell them to have an open conversation about sex and improving it between them?
Well, that's actually the first thing. It's about the communication.
Yeah.
So, you know, the question I would say would be, you know, how much does she or does he know about their desires and what it is that they want? Yeah. How do they see their relationship, their sexual relationship now? And what do they feel that could be different for it to be better? And being able to have that open conversation. Let's work on an assumption that they're comfortable talking about sex. Is that what you're saying? Like they can do that anyway.
Yeah.
Do it outside of the bedroom. That's primary objective number one. Don't jump straight to trying to figure out what you want. And you know, obviously there's an aspect of exploration in the bedroom, and that's important. But get comfortable talking about sex outside the bedroom first. Normalize conversations around sex.
It's not a cringe thing. It's not like...
No, well, that's it. Because if there's an element of cringe involved, then it's worth addressing that and just acknowledging, you know, having that conversation outside the bedroom, normalizing talking about sex. And that bit of cringe is, okay, look at that with compassion too. It's like, sometimes sex can be awkward, sometimes it can be clunky. And just being able to have that open conversation about that and what your desires are and what your preferences are, and just, you know, just kind of explore that conversationally first would definitely be the way to go.
You must get asked in your line of work to maybe perform some niche things or some kinks, and you might not feel comfortable with them all the time when you say no.
Yeah.
My partner asks me to do a certain kink or sexual act, and I straight off, no, I don't really feel comfortable with. How do I tell him no politely and kindly, and how do I maybe explore that if it's something I'm willing to compromise on?
Yes, that's a good question. So I guess the first thing is to establish, when you've been asked this specific thing, what is it about it that makes you uncomfortable? And is there any aspects of it that you're okay with? And then it's about figuring out what you're willing to compromise on. So if you say, for example, I want to be tied up and I want to be spanked really hard, you might think about that and say, well, actually, that's not what I'm not comfortable giving that. Because from that perspective, if you're being asked by your partner, you're the giver in that.
So I'll be the woman in this relationship and say, why do you want to hurt me?
Right. That's your reaction.
Yeah, I'm taking this position.
That's your position. Yeah. Okay. No, it's not. Am I role playing this?
Yeah. Okay, so let's start from the start. You say, babe, I've got this thing. Okay.
Babe, I've got this. I never say babe. I'm really wanting to explore a little bit of kink, and I would like to tie your wrists behind your back and, give you a little bit of spanking whilst we're doing doggy style.
Okay. Thank you for coming to me with that. But I want to know.
Imagine that actually happened in a relationship. Well, I'm glad you brought this up. Let's talk about that.
My concern is, where does that come from? Is it wanting to hurt me or give me a pain or humiliate me a little bit?
No, not really. I think I'm not 100% sure where it comes from really. But I kind of like the idea of experimenting with that. I just think that I don't know, maybe there's a dominant thing in there. I don't really know. But how do you feel about that? What's your kind of reaction to that?
I'm not 100% closed off, but I'm not 100% in.
Okay.
So what could we do to maybe...
What is it that's... Sorry, go on.
What were you going to say?
Well, because you were saying you're not 100% closed off or 100% in. So really, for me, to explore this, I'd like to have some sense of what it is. If we're looking at, let's say, an imaginary scale of 0 to definitely not, 100 to definitely, what can we do on that sliding scale to move it up more? What do you think? Is there something that you need to know about what I want, or something that can change that would make you more comfortable?
Well, I don't like it when you ejaculate on my face. It makes me feel a bit humiliated.
Okay.
I just feel like this is an extension of that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, well, what if we were it was just about exploring the tying up, and what if, let's just say it's not about the sex at all. What if we just to explore it, there's no sex involved, but it's about the spanking and the tying up? Because I've never done that and I want to see what that's like.
Okay, well, I want to make you happy, so why don't we start in the middle?
In the middle? So you're half tied up and then...
Yeah, so maybe I'm half tied up, or maybe you don't start doing it really aggressively, because when I watch the porn videos, it looks really aggressive. So maybe we start
really light.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Is that would you say that's what's your reservation? What do you think was it that was kind of giving you a little bit of resistance?
The porn.
You think it's too aggressive?
Yeah.
Okay, well then how about we do that and we have a safe word? Because then if it's too hard, if I'm spanking you too hard, your wrists are tied behind your back, I'm spanking you too hard.
Okay, so this sounds like it could be more something about trust.
Well, I just think if we're going to explore this, it's important that we establish what our boundaries and limits are. Because obviously, if you're talking about watching the porn and you think it's a bit rough, I don't want to go too hard. So if I'm thinking that we have a safe word, you might say to me, you don't have to have a safe word, but I need to know if I'm doing it too hard.
Okay.
And you can just tell me to go a bit softer. Because then if we're going to explore it, then I want to get a sense of whether it's going to work for you and how comfortable you are. And I see you laughing. What's going through your mind?
It sounds like we have a good understanding of our boundaries. I think we should explore.
I think we should explore.
Okay, but you have to do the dishes.
I'll do the dishes. Oh, that's a turn off for me, actually. That's a huge turn off.
Well, no, a lot of what I hear from the guys at the strip club is what turns them off are when women bargain the sex for chores.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when they say...
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you were talking about earlier. You were talking about earlier about the different forms of prostitution.
Yeah.
Actually, I should lend you that book, Why Women Have Sex. It talks about some of these things, bargaining. There's kind of there's a trade-off. So that's quite interesting that you kind of say that, the dishes thing.
Yeah, but again, I'd feel annoyed if a man was like, I'll give you a little bit later if you do the dishes. It's not nice.
No, I don't think that works the other way around, does it?
I think men as well, they just want to feel as a whole wanted, accepted, but don't we all?
Yeah, I think the thing is as well with the fantasy situation, there are theories out there. There's I haven't really dived much into this. There's a guy called Jack Moran who wrote a book called The Erotic Mind, and one of his theories is the core erotic theme, and it's this idea that obviously there's a reason and explanation. Perhaps earlier experiences in our life that underpin why we have the certain fantasies we have. When I say early experiences, people might instantly think of traumatic experiences or child abuse, stuff like that. It's not that. That's a misconception with stuff like BDSM.
And a lot of attraction is built in early years, I feel.
Yeah, there could be some aspect of that. But again, I haven't dived greatly into that. But in a nutshell, it's about trying to understand what underpins your fantasies. So I think it's useful because it's important to not necessarily jump to thinking, well, if somebody wants to slap my bum, my bot. I said bum. I haven't said that since ages.
Your ass.
Yeah, my ass. Slap you on the ass. It's not necessarily an indication of them being a violent person, because people think that with BDSM. That's a misconception. People always think BDSM is like you've got something wrong with you, and it's you enacting some sort of secret.
In fact, you're exercising the most amount of control and what's the word? Control and boundaries.
Yeah, it's actually one of the things
because you're speaking about what we're gonna do.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really useful for BDSM is how people learn about boundaries, because you have to come up with establish what your boundaries are. Establish if you're doing a dom and sub situation, who's the dom and who's the sub, what your limits are. All of the rules have to be established because it's necessary for safety, but it's also a really good place to practice those skills. The skills that we talked about even just in the bondage, where it's like, well, I need to know what your limit is, because if you're going to explore this with me, I'm not going to replicate what you've seen in porn, because I don't want to do that anyway. But if that's too intense, I want to know what your limit is and what's okay, and we explore that and have an understanding that you will communicate with me if it's too much.
Well, I think as well it's important to do what you just said, like try these more exploratory things, even if it's BDSM or something like that, because then you'll be able to vocalize yourself more, and that will improve what 100%. We call the classic sex.
Yeah. But also these skills are transferable. I always talk about how your sex life and your everyday life is inextricably linked. The skills you learn in one is going to impact the other, and the experiences you have in one is going to impact the other. So obviously if you're doing BDSM and you're developing all those skills, that's a great thing for connection. And research shows that BDSM is a really good way to deepen connection because of all those skills that you develop, and you can understand why, because if you're in that relationship and together you're proactively creating this plan of an experience together with each other's needs and limits in mind, what a beautiful thing for a relationship that is.
There's nothing more sexy than a vocal person, I think. Not like a dictator, but someone who knows their own mind, knows what they want, I think.
Yeah.
And as well, when I see women, obviously, I'm not into women, but when I see women, not even in a sexual capacity, but like in their work or in their life, really kind of take full autonomy over knowing what they want, I think that's it is a really impressive thing, because you have to work such a hard place to get there, because as a young woman, you're not taught to be like that sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, my childhood was different. I was kind of like not encouraged, but not encouraged, like just be as you are, and I just grew up to be the way I am.
Yeah.
But with some women, it's like, oh, don't do that because it's too gauche. It's too gauche to ask for what you want, or real women don't act like that. You should be a bit more submissive.
Yeah, and asking for what you want is a skill.
Yeah,
it's a skill. It's one of the things that
it's ballsy.
Well, it is ballsy, and it's there's so much tied up into it. And I think that one of the reasons people, there's many reasons people don't ask for what they want. Partly they're worried about offending. Like they might ask for something that's not allowed, and that's going to be offensive. Also, they're being rejected.
Yeah,
there's so many reasons, and many people have that anyway.
And reasons you might never know why.
100%, yeah. And
I feel so ballsy when I go to Chipotle and I ask for extra chicken on top of what I've already got, because obviously I'm not paying for that extra chicken, but I'm like, I'm going to try it. I'm going to ask for something.
Yeah, why
today.
not? 100%.
Yeah.
100%. So it is a skill, and it's actually why it's one of the skills that with some of my coaching clients, I teach them to develop that skill of asking for what they want. Because it's also about congruence. So I talk about congruence, and this is one of the things I always talk about in consent, why consent is not just about yes and no. It's about how you feel. It's an embodied experience, because you could probably think of an experience where you've said yes, where you felt inside of yourself, not really, I don't want to do that, but you've gone along with it, or the same the other way round. So it's about developing that awareness, really. True consent is about really having that self-awareness, like, how do I feel in my body when this thing comes up? And do I really want to do it? You think about your impulses. When you do something impulsively, you might actually feel inside of you, I don't want to do it. like when I'm triggered into anxiety, or for example, it might lead me to like, oh, I'm anxious, I'm going to have a biscuit. That's not, I don't really want a biscuit, but it's really trying to address the anxiety. So it's not really what I actually want. It's just
fight or flight as well.
Yeah, exactly. So these kind of anxiety mechanisms. So that's why I always talk about consent as being embodied. It's not just about yes and no agreement. Because of course, also in that vein, as a woman, and this is more common with women, I think, you could say yes to things that you don't really want, but you're doing it to feel, to feel safe. Or if you're in a relationship that's abusive, it might be that saying yes is safer than saying no, but it's not what you want. You go along with it for your own protection, and that actually has a latent effect, or it has a continued effect. So if you then get out of a relationship where that's a situation, like some of the women that I coach that still have that, it's really hard to ask for what they want because they've been in abusive relationships in some format of, or had some form of relationship with parents or whatever it is that's meant they felt like what they want doesn't matter. So that it becomes a skill to learn. It's like starting from scratch.
Well, it's weird. You've just reminded me of like consent is obviously very important sexually, and you should be able to, even if someone looks uncomfortable and says yes, that's a no, you know? But in the strip club, when we're trying to get dancers, and we sometimes get moochers who just watch the stage and they just want a free show and they don't want to buy dancers, and we're independent contractors, so we get paid to dance separately in a VIP room, and we have a house fee to work off. So sometimes we reverse psychology and we use the guilt trip of the guy doesn't really want to like pay for a dance, but then you kind of say, well, I know you're not that guy who just watched the stage and like would let the girls dance for free. Like, I know you're not that guy. And you just kind of like say, oh, well, you know, we've had such a nice time together, just like sitting here, having our drinks, watching the stage. And I know you treat me well. I you know, you use that really a manipulative, shrewd way of reverse psychologying them. But then I don't feel bad about that. I don't feel like I'm violating a consent boundary. They're violating.
That's obviously the exact opposite to how I operate. Yeah. That's like the antithesis of like, which is fine. It's not a judgment on you.
Well,
but
you
like,
have walked into
I want to have that awareness where like, especially if I'm teaching them to ask for what they want and we're having an experience, and it's kind of like, I can see in their face, they're kind of like, when I say having an experience, I mean like, let's say we're practicing asking for what you want. And I can see in their face, they're kind of going along with something. And it's like, I have to have that presence to be like, okay, really think about how you're feeling and give you an opportunity to really reflect on that. Is this really what you want? It could be just a massage where we're practicing different massage techniques, and it's purely for the purpose of her practicing asking for what you want. So even in that context of being like, oh, can you rub my shoulders? Sometimes they have really struggle. It's like, that's still really difficult.
So if you want something emotionally satisfying and enlightening and can open you up to something, go for Seb's route. If you're looking for something purely transactional, go for my route.
Yeah. It's not like everybody who comes to me walks away like they've, been on some sort of health retreat. It's not like that. It's different strokes for different folks, and people will get different things out of it. And obviously most of my clients are actually repeats and regulars, but I obviously have a good selection of them that are like, selection's not really the right word, but I do have a good amount that are just one-offs. You might be traveling or whatever it might be. And, again, it's like I said earlier about the different kinds of connection. You can have that brief, fleeting, really awesome connection with someone that's short-lived, and then you go on with your lives, and that's great.
Isn't it weird how it's so different? But we don't do the same thing, but like we're like cousins.
Well, like you're the evil devil, and I'm like the. I'm calling myself an angel here, but
we're like cousins, so we belong in the same
or
community.
Evil twins.
Yeah,
there's like one evil twin. I'm calling you the evil one, by the way.
Well,
That's so mean. Maybe not the best analogy, but
if you walk into a strip club, what do you want me to do? Give you money? No.
I'd love that. I'd go to more strip clubs if that was.
You'd pick up a lot of clients, actually.
Yeah, £50 to give. You get £50 on your way in.
No, but like a lot of girls will refer, because obviously it's predominantly men, they'll refer girls who they know who are escorts, right, if they're looking for something more, and then I think they take a commission with the referral.
But yeah,
go to Magic Mike.
Yeah. What that show was it? Isn't it a theatre production?
Is that the Hippodrome at the moment?
Yeah, but I don't think that's the same scenario, is it? It's like watching theatre. You know, like going to cabaret and hanging around. Oh, you like the sexy show, didn't you? Do you want another sexy show?
That's what girls do.
Though it is in Soho, so maybe I'll be all right down there.
Yeah. Do you want another sexy show?
Yeah, that's just the start. There's more to come.
Okay, all right. Well, we are nearing the end. Well, we're going to land on a little bit of a crude question to finish up with. And we can plug everything in after. The butt plugs later.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm joking, guys. XL butt plugs.
XL butt plugs, yeah.
Does penis size matter?
My penis or hers?
In your
Both.
job.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's funny because that kind of comes up. That came up on the documentary I did in Paris. Actually, that came up on there.
Does it matter or not?
No, I don't think it does. Well, it doesn't. I mean, I've got a decent size. I won't tell you how big it is. It's got a decent size. It's bigger than average. That's more information than
What's
you probably
average?
need. I think average is something like 5 inches or something, isn't it?
Okay.
Somewhere around
Yeah, but
that.
it's easy for you to say that when you're bigger than average. You can say, well, it doesn't matter.
Well, I think that average is, what is it, an inch? Correct? I think it's genuinely, I think it's 5 inches. But yeah, it's, you know, not everybody's out there looking for monster Adonis, massive, giant 8-inch, 9-inch cock. No, I guess it's, it really depends what you're looking for. I don't think there's been many situations where I've actually been asked the size of my cock. It's been very rare.
That's such like a boy question.
Well, it is a boy question, isn't it?
What's the size of your cock?
Yeah. I think I'd say the times that it's happened is when I've met with couples and they've been like, part of it is that you have to be bigger than me. So it's like, yeah, okay, that's fine. And I tell them and it's, you know, it's all good. So that's when it's normally asked. Generally, women don't ask for that. And it's actually, this is one of the things as well. One of my things for filtering out, you know, if it's a guy messaging me pretending to be a woman or pretending to be a couple, you know, there's signs that are quite clear. If they ask for dick pics, quite often I'm like, okay, approach with caution. This might be a guy pretending to be a woman. And, you know, that can be one of the telltale signs. So actually, that's another thing I would say, that if you're going to be someone who takes bank transfers, explicit images, I only send once a deposit's been paid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you ever do an OF?
No F.
OF, OnlyFans.
No. Is that what that is? OF, that's become its own thing. It's become OF now. No, I don't. I considered it, but I don't know what I would do on there. I don't
Not
know what
even
I would
graphic, but just lifestyle.
Maybe.
Because women are very, they like the full picture.
Yeah.
They like the experience. There's a reason why women use Instagram more and men use Twitter more.
Right.
Like, it's because they like that visual experience. So maybe that's something to think about.
So women use Instagram more?
Yeah.
Well, that's good for me then.
And Pinterest.
Right.
But you can kind of see that. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not... this documentary I did, it's called Escort Boys, and it's only out in Amazon France.
Okay.
You know, I talk about my intimacy and sexuality work and my brand Pleasure Map, and working as an escort and the differences between those. Yeah, don't cross your own boundaries just because there's some money for it.
There you've had what size penis you should have if you're going to be an escort. I just said that because it sounds really good on the clips.
Yeah.
So I needed something spicy to bring them in.
Yeah.
So that's why I planted
Ouch,
that.
don't stick that all the way up there.
God. Stop it.
It's blood. It's blood.
I'm going to clip that to after the break and they're going to think, what were they up to? Okay. Thank you so much for your time today, Sebastian. Would you like to tell the audience where they can find you if they're a little bit more interested?
Yeah. So if you're, considering either escorting or my coaching work, I can be found on the Male Escort Agency or Gentleman for Hire. And as an intimacy and sexuality coach, you can find me under my brand Pleasure Map at pleasuremap.co.uk, and on Instagram, just at Pleasure Map.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Sexonomic. Like always, if you want to follow our social journeys, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or any of the other good socials that are in the bio. I hope you really enjoyed this experience, and we will see you next time. Bye.
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 Bye.